Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kyra and I have been doing all sorts of pregnancy style updates, and now my little baby boy is born. I'll be doing all sorts of motherhood and lifestyle videos too. So since my last video, obviously quite a lot has happened. I've had my little baby boy. So this is River and he was born on the 6th of November at 1:59. And he weighed 6 pounds 7 ounces, so he was small. I was 39 weeks plus 1 day when he was born. So today I thought I'd just tell you guys my birth story. I did have a really positive birth. So if you're looking to hear positive birth stories, this is definitely one to stick around for. So let's get straight into it. My labour started on Wednesday the 4th of November. At 6:30 p.m. I lost my mucus plug. I had been having contractions the whole of that day. Well, not really contractions, but I had been having cramping throughout the whole of that day. So I think that was kind of the beginning of labour early on that day, but at 6:30 I lost my mucus plug, and then from then I was actually having contractions around every 10 minutes, so one every 10 minutes. Sometimes it'd be slightly above and sometimes it'd be slightly under. And I actually had the worst night's sleep that night, as you can imagine. I was having contractions all night and I barely got any sleep. I'd fall asleep and then wake up when the new contraction came. So that was on Wednesday evening. I then woke up Thursday morning very early, about 7 a.m. and I started timing my contractions because they were really painful at this point, and so I thought I'd start timing them, and they were coming around every 9 minutes now. So when Cody woke to go to work at 8 o'clock, I did say to him, I said, I'm having regular contractions, they're coming every 9 minutes, so I don't know if it's going to be a good idea for you to go to work. And he made the decision then to stay home. So we stayed home all of Thursday and I was on my bouncy ball. I was trying to progress labour. I was made sure I ate a big breakfast and a big lunch just in case I did go into labour. It meant that I'd had a full stomach and I wasn't going to get too hungry. I did try and get a nap in, but I don't think I managed it because the contractions were getting closer and closer together. We did go for a walk at around 6 o'clock, and then I came back and my contractions were coming every 5 minutes at this point, but they weren't regularly 5 minutes. Sometimes they got up to 6, and then I'd sometimes get the odd 8 minutes. So I was a bit scared that I was going into false labour, but it obviously was real labour. By this point I wasn't really hungry for dinner, so I did just eat some toast and just had a couple of snacks because the contractions were getting quite painful and I was having to focus solely on breathing. I couldn't really talk through them. I did then ring my mum at this point and tell her what was going on, and Cody let his mum know. It got to about 11 o'clock and we decided for Cody to go to bed. I was not going to get any sleep. I knew that by this point I was in labour. So I stayed up and timed my contractions and Cody went to bed. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, I then decided to call the hospital just to ask them what I should do. I knew I probably shouldn't be going in just yet, but they were getting quite painful. I did have my TENS machine on, so I would really recommend getting a TENS machine because they do actually really help focus your pain elsewhere. So a TENS machine isn't massively painful, it just stimulates the nerves on your back to try and reduce the pain that you're feeling in your uterus. So I would really recommend getting a TENS machine, but unfortunately the sticky pads kind of wore off, which is a bit of a nightmare because it then meant that I couldn't use the TENS machine because it wasn't sticking to my back properly. So I did have to eventually go without it, which made my contractions worse. So at 1 o'clock I did call the hospital and I just said to them that I'm in labour. They're coming about every 5 minutes, lasting about 50 seconds, and she said that they needed to last a little bit longer, so to get in a bath and have some paracetamol and hopefully that will progress things. I did get in the bath. I didn't last very long in the bath because my contractions were very painful and laying down made them a lot worse for me. I needed to be very upright because I was carrying very low down, so I had a load of pelvic pressure and being on my back just didn't help at all. I needed to be upright and kind of leaning forward to kind of ease the pain. So I was in the bath for probably about 15 minutes and then I decided to come out. And when I came out of the bath, I then decided I was going to wake Cody. And that was about at 2:30. I decided to wake him up because I just couldn't get through the contractions by myself anymore. They were way too painful and I just needed him with me to help me get through them. It was then around 3 a.m. that he decided to call the hospital again because I think he was having a bit of a mini freak out and he didn't want me to just go into labour in the house. So we called the hospital again at 3 a.m. and they said to wait a little bit longer at home. It's more comfortable at home, but if I wanted to come in, they would examine me. So I decided that I probably could go a little bit longer at home. So I did stay at home for probably about another half an hour. But in that time, the contractions really ramped up and were coming every 3 minutes. So we decided to call the hospital again and tell them that we were coming in because I wanted to get examined just so I knew how far along I was. Even if I was 2 centimeters, I was fine with that. But I wanted to know how far along I was so that I knew I wasn't about to go into labor. I wasn't about to pop a baby at home. And I kind of knew I was going to get sent home. So I wasn't too fast. I just wanted to come in and get checked so that I knew how far along I was. And then if I got sent home, I would go back home. So we got to the hospital at about 4 a.m. and in the car ride there, my contractions slowed down a little bit. They were coming every 5 minutes rather than every 3. We got to the hospital and we went straight to the midwife-led unit, so the birthing centre part in the hospital, and they had a room ready for us and she said that she'd come back in an hour once my oxytocin levels have kind of picked up again to see if my contractions have picked up. And then from there she would examine me if I wanted and we could make a plan of action. So she came in at about 5 a.m. and she decided to examine me and I was 2 centimeters dilated, which I was really happy about. And she said that they were happy for me to stay there for now. I wasn't getting admitted, but they were happy for me to stay in the hospital and progress my labour there. And one thing that I was really happy about was that Cody was able to come in from when I got to the hospital. So he was able to come straight in with us even during the second lockdown in the UK. He was able to come in. So the midwife that we had then suggested that in a couple of hours at around 7 o'clock or 6:30, we should go for a walk to try and see if it would stimulate my labour and try walking up the stairs. So at about 6:30 we went for a walk around the outside of the hospital. It was very, very cold, so it didn't last very long. I think we went for a 45-minute walk and I walked up and down the stairs quite a few times. And this really picked my labour back up again and they were coming about every 4 or 5 minutes. So when we got back to the room, there was a changeover of staff at around 7:30. We had 2 lovely midwives that were checking up on me and my labour started to kind of progress from there. My contractions were very, very intense and luckily the hospital were able to give us a TENS machine to use because obviously mine had kind of broke on me, so that really, really helped. But yeah, my contractions were quite painful at this point and I was using breathing techniques which I'd learned in hypnobirthing, but it was very hard for me to kind of breathe in for a very long time. So I tend to do like short intakes and then long exhales rather than an intake of 4 and then out for 8. So I did kind of make up my own breathing techniques, but it worked for me. The midwives then told me that they would examine me at 10:15 because it had been 4 hours since the last examination at 6 o'clock. And by this point I was having really bad contractions. So I was a bit nervous for when she was going to internally examine me because it does kind of trigger contractions when they're kind of fiddling up in there. So I was really, really nervous because they were coming quite regularly and they were quite painful. And in order to be examined, you have to be laying on your back. And like I said, I hated that position. It made them more painful. It felt like I couldn't breathe through them properly and I was just really dreading it. So I was really, really hoping that I had progressed, but I was assuming that I was still 2 centimeters because I thought it's better for me to be less optimistic and be happy if I have progressed rather than to be over optimistic and then be disappointed if I haven't progressed. So they checked me, it did trigger 2 contractions, which I did have back to back, and then I was told that I was actually 6 centimeters. So I was really happy. I had progressed 4 centimeters in only 4 hours. So a centimeter an hour. So relieved because my contractions were really painful at this point and I didn't know how I was going to be able to manage it if I wasn't far along enough. So at this point I was so happy because it meant that they could run the birthing pool because I wanted a water birth. So straight away the midwife started running me a bath, and I went to the toilet beforehand, and then I was stood up, kind of leant over the pool, trying to breathe through the last couple of contractions before I could get in the pool. And as soon as the pool was ready, Cody took off that TENS machine and I jumped straight in, and it was immediate relief. So I would also recommend water birth if you do want to have an unmedicated birth. TENS machine and water baths are a really great idea. It did really help me. By this point I was absolutely exhausted. I had been in labour basically since 6:30 on the Wednesday, and this was now almost 11 o'clock on the Friday, and I hadn't had any sleep. So I was absolutely shattered, and I was basically falling asleep in the pool. My contraction had a bit of a break. When I first got in the pool, probably didn't have a contraction for about 10 minutes, and then they started coming back again. But the water really did help with the pain, and I was able to kind of have a bit of support. I was able to use the sides of the tub to kind of lean up against because I was just so exhausted I couldn't really hold myself up. So I found that really helpful. Laboured in the birthing pool for about 2 hours, getting through the contractions, which were getting very intense. And at about 12 o'clock, I started feeling pressure in my bum. Basically, you feel like you need to do a poo, and at this point that means that the baby is moving very far down into the birth canal, and they're very kind of almost there. And by this point I then asked for gas and air because they were getting very painful, and I couldn't do it anymore unmedicated. So I got all the way up to 8 centimeters unmedicated completely, and then from about 8 centimeters onwards I did use gas and air. The gas and air did really help. At about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was really getting the urge to push, and it's quite a weird feeling when you get the urge to push because your body kind of automatically does it. You don't really have to push, you just have to kind of breathe through the contraction, and then your body kind of like naturally tenses up. So at this point I was like yelling out like, I need to push, and the midwife was saying like, no, you don't need to push just yet. And I was thinking, my body isn't even letting me have control over this, like it's pushing for me. I couldn't stop it even if I wanted to. So then she wanted to do an internal examination to make sure I was 10 centimeters dilated, so that otherwise it was going to inflame my cervix if I was pushing and I wasn't actually ready. So I did have to kind of get into a bit of a position in the pool, and they did have to internally examine me, which did trigger a contraction, and she couldn't actually finish the examination because I was in so much pain once she had internally examined me. So she had to stop halfway through, and then 5 minutes after the contraction ended, she tried again, and I was basically given permission to push. So I got into a position, I was on kind of all fours leaning over the tub, and I was then allowed to start pushing. So I had gas and air, and I had Cody, bless him, on the other side of the pool with a fan in one hand, the gas and air in the other hand, because I was so weak I couldn't really lift up the gas and air, and the gas and air does make you feel a little bit loopy. So I was kind of out of it. I didn't really know what was going on. All I knew was that I had to push and I had to try and get this baby out. So he had the gas and air in one hand, a fan in the other hand, and after every time I took the gas and air, it made me so thirsty. So I would be like, water, and then he'd grab me the water, and I'd like down like loads of the water, and I have to keep calling midwives in to refill the water. And then I think it got to, by this point, time is like completely irrelevant, but at some point I ran out of water, and Cody said to the midwife like, you need to get more water, and the midwife was going to leave the room, and I literally said, I was like, don't either of you leave, because like I knew that this baby was about to come, and I said, don't either of you leave. So they had to get another midwife to come in to get me some more water. And then because I was having a water birth, you have to have 2 midwives in the room with you, so they had to call the other midwife that I'd had also come in the room, and I then began to push. So it was very painful, and I was biting down on the gas and air very hard. I'm surprised I didn't break a tooth. But the pushing feeling is definitely a lot better than the contractions you get at the very beginning, because you'll feel like you're expelling it, so you feel like you actually like are doing something. So I actually I know it sounds weird, I quite enjoyed the pushing stage. It did hurt. Labour does hurt. It was a very positive experience. I then started to push, and I was pushing, and then I could feel kind of his head coming back up. So the midwife was really handy, and told me that after each push to kind of hold it. So push and then hold, and then push again and hold, and push again and hold. And that kind of kept his head there. This was actually really difficult because of the ring of fire. So for those of you that don't know, it's kind of when the head is crowning, it kind of feels like you're about to rip in half. So it's very painful and very uncomfortable. And it got to a point where I basically, his head was right there, and I kind of was like, nope, I'm not pushing. And as I kind of jumped up, because it was quite a shock, like the pain, his head just popped out of me. And then because his head popped out of me, it kind of triggered me to kind of leap up, which obviously you can't do, because if his head came out of the water, I would have had to get out the pool to deliver the rest of the body, because he would have started breathing. So they had to Cody had to kind of push me back into the pool. And then the midwife took my gas and air away and said, with this last push, you don't need the gas and air. And with the next contraction, when it builds, really big push. And so I did that, and he came out, and we had skin to skin, which was really lovely. He was brought straight to my chest, and we did manage to do delayed cord clamping, so he got all of his blood. Then they took him from me after about 10 minutes of being in the pool, because they wanted you to get out of the pool. I was kind of sitting in there with my waters that had broken like an hour before he came out, and stuff everywhere. So they kind of want you to get out of the pool. So they gave the baby over to Cody, and then they gave me the injection in my thigh. I'm not sure what the injection is, but they gave me the injection in my thigh, which triggers your uterus to contract so you can deliver the placenta. So once they did that, I then had to kind of clamber out of the pool, which was quite hard because my legs were shaking. I did get the shakes when I had contractions. So my legs felt like jelly, and I was exhausted. I then had to get out of the pool, and they laid me on the bed, wrapped me in all these towels. I was shivering, I was freezing. They wrapped me in all these towels. They basically delivered my placenta. The midwife kind of tried.
Here's your son of poo. Lovely.
But yeah, I laid on the bed, and the midwife kind of was pulling at my placenta, and I said to her, I said, do you need me to push? Because I was feeling the urge to push, and she went, no. But as she was pulling, I did push, because I've read somewhere that you're not supposed to pull out the placenta, you're supposed to push it out. So I did do a push as she kind of pulled it out, and it was intact and everything. So once I delivered my placenta, obviously it's an open wound, I was getting bad kind of contractions again, I was getting cramping as my uterus kind of shrinking down. They do press on my tummy to kind of make sure that my uterus was contracting. I didn't lose that much blood. I only lost 200 millilitres of blood, which I was quite happy about. And yeah, once they delivered the placenta, they then checked for any tears, and I did have one tear. It was a 2nd degree tear in my perineum, so it did need stitches, but you have to wait an hour if you have a water birth before you can have any stitches. I'm not sure why. I think it's because your skin is soft or something like that, so I had to wait an hour. I was having trouble peeing, and the midwife did suggest putting a catheter in, which I really was against, because I knew it would delay our time. I knew it would delay us coming out of the hospital, so I kind of just said to them, I want to try and see if I can go to the toilet by myself first before we have to sort out a catheter. So I was able to do that, and that was all good. I then got skin to skin with him. I got about 30 minutes of skin to skin after we changed all the towels over, because they put towels on me when I came out, and that was obviously very wet. So we changed all the towels over. I took off my wet bra, and then I got about 30 minutes worth of skin to skin before they wanted to try breastfeeding. So we then tried breastfeeding, still having skin to skin, and he latched and was able to feed for about 40 minutes. After that, they then wanted to come in and check over the baby, give the baby vitamin K, the vitamin K injection, and kind of check over him, make sure he's got all his fingers, his toes, he's not tongue-tied, and he's perfectly healthy. So they did that, and everything was fine. And then they kind of show you how to put a nappy on and all that kind of stuff. And then I had a shower, had a jacket potato that the hospital gave me, which is really lovely. And then once they watched me feed again, they were happy for us to get discharged. So I did actually get discharged that same night. So I had him at 2 and we got discharged at 9 o'clock. So I was home by 10 o'clock, which I was really happy about. I didn't want to stay in the hospital very long. That's kind of why I wanted to give birth in the midwife-led unit, because I knew that they pushed you to kind of go home as soon as you were ready. We came home and had our first little night with our baby River, and we're very, very happy. We love him very, very much. And it was a really positive water birth experience. I hope this has helped some of you guys out if you're looking for positive birth stories. Labour isn't that scary. It can be really exciting, and it is an experience that you will remember forever. The pain is 100% worth it. I would do it 10 times over. You really do kind of forget about it in like a day or two. I will be doing a video soon about what I actually used in my hospital bag compared to what I packed. So if you guys will find that useful, stick around, and that will be up on my channel soon. If you do have any questions about labour or anything in general, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I will try and get back to you or try and answer them in one of my other videos. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video and hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, then please click that like button, and if you want to see more of these types of videos on my channel, then don't forget to subscribe. And I hope to see you in my next video.